So I'm giving the opportunity to present his work to Mr. Alexei Sokolov from the Cuban State University from Krasnodar, Russia. It's a great honor for me to give the word to Mr. Sokol because he deals with my path. He wrote a paper named Sergei Nikolaevich Tregubov, an outstanding Russian-serbian criminalist. This paper belongs to History of Criminalistics, which is my personal favorite one. So I would like to give opportunity to Mr. Sokol to share with us his ideas and his main conclusions about Sergei Tregubov. Please, Mr. Sokol, the floor is yours.
First of all, thank you for your invitation. It was a very long trip, but I'm glad to be here today. As you can see, the topic is Tregubov, an outstanding Russian-serbian criminalist. Criminal investigation, criminalistic, is not only a pure criminalistic knowledge and the process of obtaining, but also a huge number of various criminalistic institutions and people, I mean criminalists. There is always a particular person who has created every major achievement for the development of criminalistics. Criminalistics life path information allows us to better understand and evaluate criminalistics' contribution to the development of science in question. Russia and Serbia share the field of inquiry originating from their rich criminalistic legacy. A special place in this field is occupied by work as and Tregubov. Tregubov made a significant impact on the development of criminalistics of the 20th century, both in Russia and Serbia. His outstanding contribution to the development of criminalistic science, education, and its real practice have become property of two countries. Tregubov's contribution has not lost its significance. Unfortunately, there is still lack of knowledge about Tregubov's scientific achievements, both in modern Russia and Serbia. His extensive criminalistic heritage remains understudied. One of the reasons for this conduction is the fact that Tregubov was an active opponent of Soviet regime, serving in White Army after his emigration to Belgrade. He participated in the activities of some white emigration organizations here in Belgrade, which were aimed to overthrowing the Soviet power. For Soviet authorities, Tregubov was a class enemy, so it was forbidden to point at his criminalistic metrics, especially during the years of Stalin repressions. Unfortunately, previous assessments of Tregubov's work are still occasionally estimated as dedicated by an ideological bias which misrepresents his real contribution to the development of history in Russian and Serbian criminals. Thank you. In 1910 and 1913, Tregubov has an official trip to Berlin, Dresden, Lausanne, Paris, Rome, and other European cities, where he studied European criminal investigation procedures. In 1910, he met Professor Reiss in Lausanne, with whom he maintained close relationship for years. In 1911, a group of Russian judicial officers, headed by Tregubov, visited the Reiss Institute of Scientific Police. In 2.5 months, Reiss got his group familiarized with the program of full course study of scientific police. Professor Reiss delivered lectures, 14 all, in French every day, except Saturdays from 9 o'clock to 11 o'clock during the rest of the day, including Saturdays. These trainees had an access to the laboratory where their laboratory assistant Francois Gautier gave them the necessary explanation and assisted the trainees in practical experimental exercise. After the completion of the training program, Professor Reiss took the Russian students to Paris, where they got acquainted with various areas of the Paris Police Service and visit Bertillon's office, his laboratories, museum, archive, and photographic department. On his return back to St. Petersburg, he reported the result in the building of district court, the official place of judicial department. Since autumn of 1911, Tregubov started teaching criminalistics as a subject named criminal technique. During the existence of Alexander's Military Law Academy, officers of Serbian army were also taught here. In winter of 1911, Tregubov established the first Russian judicial technical cabinet. In August of 1912, a similar cabinet was established in Alexander's Military Academy. In 1912, the concept of lecture course by Reiss was published in Tregubov in Russia with the title of Scientific Technique of Crime Investigation. This book aroused great interest among Russian public, first of all among criminalist practitioners. In May 1912, Reiss came to Russia and delivered a lecture course on scientific police, scientific technique of crime investigation. In May 1912, Reiss visited the place of imprisonment for criminals in St. Petersburg. He was accompanied by Tregubov. There Reiss traded prisoners' food, including black bread and kvass. In the book for honorary visitors of the St. Petersburg House of Preliminary Detection, Professor Reiss wrote, "Fascinated by my first week to a Russian prison." Tregubov didn't limit himself to popularization of scientific knowledge on the criminalists in Russia and took an active part of the creation of government-expatriate criminalistic institutes. In 1915, Tregubov published a work substantially received and supplemental with a new section under the fundamental name of Criminal Technique, Scientific and Technical Methods of Crime Investigation, a practical good for judicial officers. This manual is recognized as the first national textbook on criminalistic, in Russia. The First World War, a February Revolution, and then the October Revolution and Civil War radically changed the life path of Tregubov, as well as millions of his compatriots. The most productive stage of criminalistic activity of Tregubov in Serbia was the period from 1922 to 1941. In Belgrade, Tregubov often met his old friend, Professor Reiss, and permanently resided in Belgrade after the end of the First World War. Tregubov got a job in technical police department in Belgrade and got one more job. He combined it with becoming a contract professor at the Institute of Criminalistics at the Faculty of Law at the University of Belgrade. In 1930, Tregubov published a small 50-page textbooks on criminal technique, which were based on his lectures delivered from students in Institution of Criminalistics since 1922. In 1935, Tregubov, together with the head of technical police of Serbia and the Norwich, published the first textbook on criminal technique in Serbian language. Until the 1941, there was mostly positive assessments of Tregubov by such criminalists as Ivankovic, Brazil, Bayer. In September of 1944, the Soviet troops entered the territory of Yugoslavia. Tregubov left Belgrade and moved to Germany. Tregubov had a well-founded fear of reprisals from the state security agencies of USSR. However, Tregubov refused to leave for the West when the Red Army approached Berlin because of his advancing age. In the spring of 1945, after the liberation of Germany, 79 years old Tregubov was taken to NKVD 3 times, but they left him alone. Tregubov passed away on June 29 in 1945 in Birkenwende, Germany. It's about 25 kilometers from Berlin. After his death, NKVD came back to his widow to a proposal to give her husband's medals because they want to put them in the state museum. Today, according to Tregubov, the author of the first Slovenian criminalistic textbook among the was inspired by German and Russian authors, among whom was Tregubov. A significant impact of modern criminalists also briefly but positively evaluates the activities of Tregubov. In the development of forensic expertise and founding Serbian criminalists, for example, Malic, Kняžić, Lukic, Milojević, Stanković, Vasiljević, and most particularly Ristić, Misticeli. The analysis of the historiographic literature in Russia and Serbia allows us to conclude that Russian criminalists know a little about Tregubov's Serbian stage of his life, and Serbian criminalists do not know enough about Russian period of his life. Practical Guide to Criminal Techniques by Tregubov has not been translated into Serbian, and his work with Handanovic criminal technique has not been translated into Russian. Today, a transition between isolation of individual criminalistic schools to their dialogue integration using the experience of all national criminalistic schools is required, despite the language barriers and politics. The lack of international historical and criminalistic studies, including those devoted to the study of historical features of the relationship between Russia and Serbia, criminalistics, hinders the understanding of their current state and the choice of directions for the future development. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Alexei. I'm sorry I spent some time before the session with Mr. Sokol, so I was free to answer, to name him by his name. Thank you for dealing and sharing with us the explanation of the close historical connections between Russian and Serbian criminalistics on this example of Sergei Tregubov.